Truth Hurts, where we expose corrupt politicians, lying corporate media. I'm Jake Duesenberg, your host, broadcasting live from Roseville, Minnesota, in the belly, the beast, the liberal zombie apocalypse of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Our sponsor today is Alpine Chemistry in St. Cloud, Minnesota. I don't want to just waste time up front here. I want to get right into the subject matter because I think this is so interesting. Our guest today, Nikki Davidson, you are an investigative reporter. Do you live in Duluth, Minnesota? Do I have that correct?
Yep, I'm up in Duluth.
Okay, where there's probably 24 inches of snow or something like that.
It
You guys
never
got a lot of
stops snowing. It just keeps coming, honestly.
good. You did a interesting report here. I actually saw your report on ICE a month ago, which was good too. But I saw your report on the Epstein connection to Minnesota, and I was like, well, I got to bring you on because this is so fascinating to me. One of the first things I did when the mass drop happened is I queried the system for things that were Minnesota connected. And I went with the usual suspects, the high profile politicians in Minnesota, and they were mentioned, but they're mentioned in emails or like news reports or something like that. I didn't find any smoking gun. I went on to other things. People that watch the show know I do a lot of different news. I don't focus on one particular area. But if I was going to focus on one particular area, this might be it. And I can tell you geeked out on the Epstein files. And
I
so
did.
I want to hear
I did. It's
what.
one of those things that once you start, you just kind of keep going because it's like, whoa, this is crazy.
All right. Well, tell us, what did you find here related to Minnesota and the Epstein files?
So I am not an Epstein expert by any means, and to be honest, once I knew that the files were released, I was just curious to see if there was a local connection like you. And I did start with some of like the politicians' names and didn't really find a lot. And then I just decided to search where I live, Duluth, and some of the things that popped up were flight itinerary planning. And I looked a little closer and realized that some of those emails were very clearly, although redacted, very clearly written to people that were attending classes. So that obviously raised some red flags, just knowing that there were a lot of young women that were wrapped up in this. So I kind of just kept going, and I would. I'm a data journalist, so I'm good at finding patterns and kind of following the lead that way. And I just noticed whether it was phrasing or, in some cases, honestly, bad redactions. I just picked up some keywords to continue putting into the search, and a whole story unraveled. Actually, a couple stories unraveled of multiple either young girls or young women. I'm going to be clear that I don't know their exact ages because they didn't share that explicitly in the files. There was one email, though, that was definitely super questionable.
Yep.
But yeah, it was just clear that there were multiple women or girls in Minnesota who had close connections with him at some point. And yeah.
Okay, and that was one of the questions I was going to ask, is if we found out the age of any of them. But that question's answered. But I think when we go through this, people can understand we are talking about young women, and certainly one that seems very, well, we'll say gross. And so there is a little bit of warning here that we'll get graphic in some of the descriptions here. This is just what anyone can find in the public search. So this is your article. This is your Substack. It's called The Watch with Nikki Davidson. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And this is a new venture for me. I actually just started doing this a couple months ago after leaving a more traditional journalism job. So it's been a evolving process, but it's been really great to do this and be able to tackle stories like this that maybe legacy media wouldn't really give me the time budget to look into the way that I did.
Okay, so I'm glad you said that. Are you familiar with this very infamous video? I'm going to pull this up because I was like, when we were chatting before the show, you had mentioned, well, you're not an expert on Epstein. Are you familiar with ABC's Amy Roebuck and the admission she had? This was released by Project Veritas many years ago.
Not
Good.
really, no.
I get to show. I get to show you this. I'm just. This is going to be so much fun for me to show you some of this stuff.
Okay, I'm excited.
So speaking of working for legacy media, this is what happens when you work for legacy media and you want to cover Jeffrey Epstein, at least back in the day.
I've had the story for 3 years. I've had this interview with Virginia Roberts. We would not put it on the air. First of all, I was told, who's Jeffrey Epstein? No one knows who that is. This is a stupid story. Then the palace found out that we had her whole allegations about Prince Andrew and threatened us a million different ways. We were so afraid we wouldn't be able to interview Kate and Will that also quashed the story. And then Alan Dershowitz was also implicated in because of the planes. She told me everything. She had pictures. She had everything. She was in hiding for 12 years. We convinced her to come out. We convinced her to talk to us. It was unbelievable what we had. Clinton, we had everything. I tried for 3 years to get it on, to no avail, and now it's all coming out, and it's like these new revelations, and I freaking had all of it. I'm so pissed right now. Like every day, I get more and more pissed because I'm just like, oh my god, what we had was unreal. Other women backing it up. Hey, yep. Brad Edwards, the attorney, 3 years ago, saying there will come a day when we will realize Jeffrey Epstein was the most prolific pedophile this country has ever known. I had it all 3 years ago.
And that was actually released in 2019. This is dated.
Yeah.
So what's so fascinating about this, and I just got to mention, so I don't get sued by Alan Dershowitz, there's nothing implicating Alan Dershowitz and any sexual impropriety. When he got his massages, his underpants were on. Okay, so let the record show that. That's the level. By the way, if you don't understand that joke, that's literally his statement to the media. That's how ridiculous this has been. Getting massages in Jeffrey Epstein's place, which you see in your article, that's been something that's been known for some time now. Okay. So yeah, there was not an appetite by legacy media, corporate media as we call it here, to actually cover this story. And they were literally burying it, right? Until they couldn't anymore, right? In 2019, obviously the high profile suicide of Jeffrey Epstein, which, I guess in many regards brought people's attention to who he was. And then since then, we've had a lot of people, mostly on the right, talk about the release. And then, in the last year, obviously this became a big political issue. And here we are today with it's hard to tell how much of the files there are because there's conflicting reports. There's allegedly at least another couple million, but I've also heard that only 5% has been released. So we don't even know. So with all that being said, thank you for doing this independent work. What did you find? What was the Minnesota connection? Let's start with your some of the things that are in your article.
Yeah. So one of the most significant connections that I found that I think really tells this story in a way that I want people to understand, because the victim stories here, it's terrible that this was allowed to go on for so long, and it's terrible what's happened to them. One of the girls that I was able to kind of like isolate and be able to follow her story, she was of Russian descent and her parents lived in Minnesota. And I'm not sure at what point she moved from Minnesota to New York, but it was clear that she was living in New York in some of the apartments that were owned and managed by Epstein. And she was communicating with them on a regular basis about modeling calls and also going to his house for massages. It was also clear in the emails exchange that there was a sexual relationship occurring. And the reason that this is, I guess, the red flag, the big email that I found, I don't know if you want to pull that one up, is I think it's going to be the first.
Is it the one up here?
Actually, I think it's farther down underneath the model headline. Yep, right here. So that was one of the pictures that was exchanged. But if you go down a little bit further, there's an email. And this is the first one that I saw that really was a big red flag to me, because she apparently sent him some pictures of herself, and he responded very negatively that it's illegal to send pictures of girls under 18 sometimes.
Well, let's start from, obviously we're reading from the bottom, and it says, "Incidentally, I have great news. My period started today." By the way, what a thing to talk about with, what was he, 57 at the time?
58, yep. Yeah.
Even that is very strange for me, because usually I do not have it for 2 or 3 months. And this means that when you come, I'll done. Obviously, some mistakes here being made.
Yeah, you can tell that English is maybe not the first language.
Right. And then, so G Vacation, for those that aren't following too much of this stuff, that's Jeffrey Epstein's email address, and it says, "Do not send me photos unless they are when you are over 18. Do not send." And so that's what you're referencing to.
Yes, and I've thought about this a lot. It's so hard to figure out, really, like, does that mean she is over 18 now or she's not? And that's why it's
Mhm.
it's kind of hard to suss that out from this whole thing. But we do know during this same time period, this was May, in June and July, she's emailing him, talking about the apartments, talking about how to get her internet connection set up, talking about the modeling calls and how those are going, and also talking about attending classes. At some point, she starts to experience some kind of like medical skin condition that is causing some kind of breakout or rash or something like that. And she's asking him, this isn't in the story, by the
Yeah,
way, this is just
I know,
extra
sorry.
information, but
I'm wondering, and it's on the screen. That's very bad on me. Bad production.
no, that's okay. But yeah,
Right.
I think this is a great way to kind of explain what I didn't put in the story because it's important too. She was asking him, send me to the doctor, please. Please send me to the doctor. And he was, responding like, well, you haven't produced. You haven't sent any other girls my way. And if
Does he
you guys,
say so? Does he say that you haven't sent any other girls my way?
I'm not, I don't want to get in any legal trouble. I don't know if
Well,
those,
we don't
those
know the name of this individual, right?
yeah. And I
Okay.
don't know the exact
Okay.
verbatim, but it was
Let
communicated. You need to find girls for me. You need to produce. You keep asking for favors, but you're not producing. And I think one of those emails is actually in the article. It's like her second email that I included where he's upset and he's saying, you keep asking for things, but you're not giving anything back.
By the way,
Um,
one of our viewers, new 2727, says Anton Lazari is asking a question. Mark, are you familiar with that name?
I am. I am not as familiar with it. Like I've heard of it and I've heard people mentioning it that are diving through the files. I, in all transparency, haven't personally looked into that name very much, so I can't really speak on it.
He was a Republican aligned bizarre guy, activist slash donor. This is many years ago in Minnesota, and so it was very similar. It was like a small Epstein kind of deal, although I wouldn't accuse him being tied to intelligence by any stretch of the imagination.
Mhm.
But it was the same kind of deal. So there was a girl, and she was actually prosecuted for it, and she was the chair of like a Republicans on like St. Thomas or something like that, one of the college campuses, and that was her job, was to go recruit and bring women to him. Right?
Mhm.
He's serving
Yep.
time in prison, 20 some years, and I don't remember what she got. So this is like this is typical of these kind of operations. We saw it right here in Minnesota. This is obviously the largest scale. Is that he has girls that he's recruiting to get other girls, and we assume possibly many that are underage.
Yes. So this is one of the biggest patterns I followed in all of my researching because I wanted to kind of figure out like how does this happen? How do girls that are even in Minnesota get connected to this guy and kind of how does it blossom out from there? And that is one thing. Way outside of Minnesota, there was a constant theme. So one of the keywords that I have started to research is like bring girls, get girls, and if you look up those, you will notice there is quite a record of him emailing people and people emailing him. Like they would find a girl, send a picture to him, and he would say whether or not he was interested. And then they would go get coffee. And just from reading and watching all of the other Epstein documentaries, I know that that was their way of like kind of vetting them. And then it was sadly a really manipulative way to get people into this because imagine you've got someone your own age that's saying, hey, there's this cool guy. He just likes to pay people. He likes to make dreams come true. And he's connected to Victoria's Secret. You want to be a model? He'll make you a Victoria's Secret model. That's
Well,
another
hold
thing.
on. Now, how is he attached to Victoria's Secret?
So he worked with Lex Wexner. So that I don't know. I know that is he the owner of Victoria's Secret? I
Oh
think
yeah,
yeah.
founder
I
and
think,
what was
and
CEO, still probably largest stakeholder of it. But
yeah, and he was Wexner's power of attorney for a period of time. So it wasn't even like, just a blatant lie. He actually had connections to the man who, was pulling the strings.
right.
So that's kind of one of the things I think is most alarming. Like if you're a young girl who, Victoria's Secret at the time was like the coolest modeling gig that you could get. And you meet a guy who's telling you that you're special and he's going to get you in. I mean, I can
Right,
understand why they would believe it,
right. Mhm.
Yeah.
And
So
and obviously a man of wealth. We don't have enough time to get into the suspect way he got that wealth, which I know a lot about, and we've talked about that in previous shows. So a man of incredible wealth, it's a great lure for young
Mhm.
women, right? That are aspiring to be
Especially
models.
desperate people. Like I was talking about the first girl that we were mentioning, she was like, "Oh, please send me to a doctor. Please send me to a doctor." And who knows what her story is with her parents, there could have even been some arrangement where her parents thought that this guy was really taking care of her and was going to be providing for her because that's what he said he would do. And for a lot of people, he did do a lot of favors. He paid for a lot of people's tuition. He paid for a lot of people's training, but of course with strings attached. And that was that they would either, be working for him or be out there recruiting other girls. And it, like, if they weren't delivering, he would email them and be very clear. I did find some emails, these were not Minnesota emails, that were just horrifically sad, where there are girls begging for help, saying, "I'm about to be put out on the street, please help me."
Mhm.
And it just seemed like at that point he was done with them, like they weren't able to recruit anyone else. They'd already got given him their massages. He had no real need for them anymore, and they just kind of tossed away. And that's just so, disgusting.
Oh, it's
It's
the
really
epitome
sad.
it's the epitome of evil. It's a level of evil beyond what most of us can comprehend because they're not actually humans to him, right? They're
Yeah, they're
objects,
just assets. They're just
right?
they're just they're people on a chessboard that he's moving around, and
Right.
then once he
It
doesn't need them anymore, he gets rid of them.
and
So,
it would be just a story to tell, about the profiling of just a serial pedophile, and that would be it, except for the fact that this guy was connected to our elites and to intelligence, apparatus, Israel and in US and then probably UK as well. And so the story is so much bigger because of that very thing. And that's why I can't get over this story is because the evil is way beyond just Jeffrey Epstein. And just so everyone understands, I've heard this trope out there. It's like, well, Ghislaine Maxwell couldn't be in prison for trafficking to no one. It's like, no, she was found guilty of trafficking to one person. That is the official narrative by our FBI today, as
mhm.
right now. And I think the thing I'm gonna share with you is, gonna open people's minds that there are other conspirators very clearly, but that Ghislaine Maxwell trafficked all these girls just to Jeffrey Epstein for his own pleasure. I mean, you can't even, like, understand, like, the things you're talking about here, it couldn't possibly just be him coordinating travel, doing these gifts, evaluating young girls, all that kind of stuff. There's no way this guy who's hanging out with billionaires and elites and politics and stuff like that is doing all that stuff, right? He has to have
Mhm.
co-conspirators. You mentioned, helping out these girls. I mean, one of the things just from the get-go is just a email, that's, talking about, a jewelry box. Uh,
Mhm.
and it's redacted who it's from and who it's to, obviously, but just talking about, JE being Jeffrey Epstein. So be sure to think, and we need to fly back to Minneapolis and Duluth on the 14th. Have a very Merry Christmas. So sometimes the gifts aren't even like paying tuition. It's just something more humble as a jewelry box. Like, I don't know, unless
Yeah, I mean, and let's say, let's say you're like an eight, even if you're 18 and you're just in college, and there's someone that is telling you you're special. You know that he's like well connected. He's got a ton of money. He's friends with celebrities, and he sends you a jewelry box in the
Mhm.
mail and says, "Come visit me." You'd be like, "Oh, wow." It's just that manipulation and grooming, you know?
Right. All right. One of the things, it was fun chatting with you because I could kind of tell that you're new to learning about Epstein, and so I was like, well, one thing really stood out in the things that you shared, and I'll go into it right now. So the emails aren't all redacted. This one is CCing Leslie Groff. Have you looked into Leslie Groff at all?
Yeah, she was one of his assistants. A lot of the communication to these girls would come from Leslie. So she was very involved in coordinating the travel and the scheduling as well.
Okay, glad you said that. All right. What I think is very important for people to understand right now is Jeffrey Epstein was a level 3 sex offender. This is 2012, and I think that was official in '08 or something like that. He was being
Mhm.
prosecuted in '06. Okay. So he was literally found. Well, I shouldn't say found. He pled, right? And it's a very questionable plea deal, right?
Mhm.
But pled to crimes of soliciting prostitution of a minor, right? Right. Everyone
Yes.
and
Yeah, and
everyone.
he
Oh, God,
he
sorry.
even spent a little bit of time in, like, a very flexible prison, or it wasn't a jail, it was like it was a jail situation in
Oh, he had
Florida
to
where
go
he
back
could
at night
leave.
to the jail.
Sorry, what'd you say?
He had to go back to the jail at night,
Yes,
right? He got to
that
get
was
out
it.
during the day.
They would let him go out, do his business stealing, whatever that means, and then he would, yeah, so that was his time that he spent. So this was after that, and
Correct.
this
Yes.
was some people would email him too after this and be like, "Oh, like, how's, your new life?" And it's like, so at least people knew that this had already occurred, the people that were well connected with him.
Right.
Yes, it was a work release situation.
Well, everyone should be investigating who this guy is that is dealing with him, especially these billionaires, because you have people that should be investigating people that you're doing business with. So I think they're culpable. But you know what's really important? I just don't hear the media talking about this enough. And this is what stood out when I was reading your article. Once again, this is The Watch with Nikki Davidson on Substack. So Leslie Groff appears in these things. She appears in like 150,000 files, right? She was
Yeah.
one of his assistants. She worked with him starting in 2001 all the way till his death in 2019. She's working with someone that's a known sex offender, a known person, was a level 3 with soliciting a minor for prostitution. She's also here in a document, and this was released because of Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna going to the Justice Department. It was initially redacted, and then they got this thing unredacted here. Leslie Groff was at one point being investigated by the FBI. But my question here is, how is she not culpable? How is she not being investigated right now when she is scheduling flights, scheduling and arranging these young women, clearly knows what she's doing, to come visit Jeffrey Epstein, and she knows what this guy's business is about. She has to know about it. And the best we can tell, she's living a quiet life in Connecticut right now.
I mean, I think that's a great question. Here's what I would say. There's definitely some blurriness on, like, who should be held criminally responsible based on, like, how he did the recruitment process where a lot of victims were recruiting, but her name was never redacted. So that tells us that she's not a and she's mentioned so often, it seems like if it was a mistake they would have fixed it by now. So yeah, it doesn't seem like she is identified as a victim at all in this situation. I'm not sure though. I'm wondering if that comes into play at all. But otherwise, the facts are that she was coordinating all of this travel. She was aware that these are young women that are coming to visit him.
Right. Well, I think the reason I bring this up is she she was part of this plea deal back in '06. She didn't have to plea herself. It was just part of what Jeffrey Epstein got from the federal prosecutor, who was told he's of intelligence, right? So that was the reason they weren't prosecuting her at that time. But she hangs around all the way until 2019, where obviously then he ends up in prison again, and her hands are all over all this stuff, including the documents that you show. And I'm just thinking, I know I want to see these elites and these political figures go down too, but this is like the most obvious one of them all. I know it's not the big shiny object that the media wants. They want a handcuffed, politician or billionaire. But imagine being this person and you're scheduling these young women and delivering gifts and all that kind of stuff on behalf of this guy who's clearly a pedophile. I just don't understand how this person's not interviewed right now by the FBI. And honestly, I don't know how they don't have enough evidence right now to handcuff her and put her away.
I think you've got a great point, and that's something I would love to know more about too. What's going on behind the scenes? What's the story that we don't know with
Uh,
all of that?
the Great Liberty Vault, who's actually follows this stuff even more than I do, says minor correction. Epstein's plea deal was in '08. Yeah, I think I said '06. So it's kind of hard to keep the whole timeline because he's been up doing this stuff since the well, ladies in the 90s. God, I kind of want to geek out and just go
Mhm.
into like the whole story of them because it's just so bizarre. Okay, so I'm sorry. I went on a little tangent, but I thought that's an interesting component. That was the thing that stood out the most for me because what you did in this article is you're kind of showing how this operation happens, and it's maybe it just feels different because it's personal. Like you live in Duluth, I travel to Duluth all the time. I'm like,
Mhm.
sucks. These are girls in our
Yeah.
community that were
Yeah.
basically quasi being trafficked.
Yeah, and one of the interesting thing that has happened since I put my story out is a lot of like, I got one lady who messaged me and was pretty furious and said, "This isn't possible. There weren't any reports of missing people here. You need to, like, check your facts," all of that, and I'm like, "That doesn't that's not what human trafficking always looks like, you know? This there doesn't have to be a missing child report for something horrible like this to be happening in our own community," and it just feels very personal. The other story of the woman that I
Can I stop you real quick?
identified.
What do you think the energy behind that lady saying that is? I don't understand why someone would fire at you for that.
No. Since I've been a journalist, there have always been people that, are convinced that whatever I'm saying is not true, and I don't necessarily blame people for that. I know that, um
Oh, did I lose you? Oh, no. It looks like I lost her here. I heard a computer sound and then I lost her. Yeah, that's so interesting. I'm just wondering what the energy is. I'm sure she'll come back here. Liberty Vault says Sarah Kellen, Adriana Ross, Nadia Marsikova were also assistants that worked alongside Epstein, planned trips for the girls and were named co-conspirators in that first case in addition to Groff. Exactly. And the plea deal also gave cover to unnamed conspirators. But I was told that, the Justice Department and Cash Patel and Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi, who read all of the files, all of them, all 5 million or whatever they are, all of those files she read. And so, yeah, there's no co-conspirators, although that's pretty much been proven false. Terry Time says, ask her to investigate Tom Emmer. Fair point, I did actually look at the files. It was one of the first names I put in. Tim Walls and then Tom Emmer, I think, was the order I put him in. So, yeah, we'll definitely stay on top of that one. Sounds like I'm getting you back here, Nikki. I think I can hear your audio, but I don't have video yet. Let me read some more of these comments here. Terry Time says, Anton, the man Emmer introduced Jennifer Carnan. Is that true? Is that how the connection happened? That is such an interesting one here. I see some other people doing it. Welcome back. So it's so funny. I heard a computer noise, like a little ding, and then you cut out. I'm like, did her computer just update on her unknowingly?
Sorry, my cord got loose and it died on me. Sorry about that. I'm back. We were talking about, people not believing that there's human trafficking occurring in our own communities.
So you think that's it? It's just my show's called The Truth Hurts because I feel like some truths really hurt, and some people would rather just have soft lies. You think that's what it is? Is like, I don't want to hear this is happening in our community, and rather just be lied to. You think that's it, or do you think it's something more nefarious? You don't know.
Honestly, I can't. I don't know anything. This is the first time that this lady has ever contacted me, so I don't know anything about her history. And I will say, to the credit of everybody else that was on social media, because she expressed her opinion on my Facebook, post of the article too, and everyone was like, "What are you what are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense." So I don't know if it's like you said, just someone who wants to believe that this isn't possible. It doesn't seem like someone that like has power in this area, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So,
sure. No, that makes sense. There's a story I used to tell people. Like, there was this lady, Greater Minnesota, that was at a political speech I was given, and I was exposing her state senator for his bad anti-liberty voting record, and she just said to me, I don't think this is true. He's a good man, I think he goes to my church or something like that. And it's just like, well, hopefully I'll win you over. But it's like, this is the voting record, and this is what he voted on. I mean, this is the proof. But some people would rather just like not believe it, and
mhm.
I guess I can kind of sympathize with that, but it's not good. You shouldn't do that. You should be looking and discovering the truth, especially when it involves minors, and especially when it involves blackmailing our politicians,
Yeah.
which might be the reason a lot of our policies, in Washington D.C. don't match where the American people are. All right, cut you out. I'm so sorry. I really wanted to investigate why someone would do that, and you were about to say something else. So
Oh, I was just saying, yeah, that in today's world with the media, a lot of people don't necessarily trust everything, and I don't blame them because, I'm outside. I'm an independent journalist now too, and I also don't immediately believe everything that I read, which I think is a good trait to have. But when you have something like this, like, oh, here's the actual files from the FBI release that's showing that these flights are coming in and out of Minnesota, and we can see the conversations happening with young women in Minnesota. At some point, you got to say, this looks like Epstein was talking to young girls in Minnesota,
do you feel like, are you going to stay on top? Well, actually, before I ask that question, what else did you find here? Maybe I'm missing parts of your article, or there's things that aren't in your article.
There's another person that I found, and that one it is very interesting because this young woman, I have no idea, honestly, her age, but she was different than the other one, where she was a little more deeply ingrained with the work with Epstein and her other assistants. It seemed like she maybe was an employee. There was an email about like her tax information. And what gets really weird is that's where Kimball Musk, that's Elon Musk's brother, enters the picture here. So, and then you can also see there's some names here that I do think are very interesting. That Boris name, I think I've seen him kind of mentioned by the mainstream media and the names that are released, but came across quite a few really interesting emails that were from him. In this one, in the story, he is talking about hanging out with Kimball Musk, and he mentions that you can go
I'm
up
sorry.
just a little bit.
Where am I
Yeah,
at?
you were right on. Just go up just a little bit, up a little bit. Oh, actually, I'm so sorry. Go
Going
down,
down.
down, right there. That email.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Okay, so this is a weird situation where these men are talking with Epstein about Kimball Musk and how he likes this one girl that's in Epstein's circle, and it looks like they make sure that she's there when they're hanging out with him, and kind of act as like I don't want to say a cupid because I don't know how much was really going on here, but it appears that then this girl and Kimball Musk were in some kind of romantic situation. But at the same time, Epstein and people like Steve Hansen are also privy to all of the details of it and how it's all going down, and talking behind the scenes about like how she should handle this relationship. So to me, that became kind of interesting because it's like, well, are they using this girl as an asset to get closer to the Musk family?
Right.
You can look at the emails and kind of make your decision for yourself there, but it's definitely suspicious.
Well, that's 100%. Yeah, we always talk about like them as victims of a sexual act, but sometimes it's or just for Jeffrey's pleasure, but it's also used as a way to get to these elites. And then, of course, my opinion, and I think there's evidence here, but it's never been admitted by anyone in official capacity in the government, is that essentially they're trying to get the blackmail, right? They're trying to film this kind of stuff. Geez, if you can't victimize these girls more, then they film it, and then it's used for blackmail with high profile politicians and billionaires, right?
I mean, I don't know that, but I think it's an interesting theory for sure.
Yeah, it's probably always just going to be a theory, isn't it? Unfortunately. I'm sorry. I'm very, very upset with how our government is responding to all this kind of stuff. I don't know if people saw this, but so obviously Prince Andrew was arrested, and then the former ambassador of the U.S. from the U.K., his last name's Mandelson, was his first name, Peter Mandelson. Not a name that I'm generally familiar with, but he was a U.S. ambassador from the U.K., was also arrested yesterday. And we know that there's been CEOs and people in the business community having to resign. But in America, there have been zero arrests outside of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. And if I could just go on another little branch off of the main conversation, I was watching Liberty Vault's video this morning talking about Ghislaine Maxwell's treatment. And right now, Ghislaine Maxwell, who was the one co-conspirator that's actually been prosecuted, she is now in a minimum security prison, which is against the U.S. Justice Department's policy for pedophiles, right? Sex traffickers. And apparently even is allowed to have a dog.
Yeah. I mean,
Why?
it's just curious because it's like, well, what resources are you providing to the victims? Are you doing anything to take care of them? You're giving, her a therapy dog. Like, the victims here are calling for the release of the full files. And then I do think we should talk about this because this bothers me so much. We talk about redactions all the time. It seems like the redactions for the victim's name didn't get a lot of attention at all. It's part of the reason I was able to tell the story. And there's an email address on the website where the files are released. It says, like, if you're a member of the public and you notice names or pictures that shouldn't be on here or should be redacted, please contact us. And I did that. And I haven't checked this morning, but I did check a couple days later, and one of the names was still on there. And it really, really bothers me. It bothers me so much that they left those people's names, in some cases, pictures of their faces. And I've heard from other media reports that sometimes there were even nude photos that were released. It's just disgusting to me that in releasing these files, they didn't take the very basic steps to protect the victims. Just being an investigative reporter, covering sexual assault in the past, I've never seen anything like this before. Usually they are very careful with making sure they've got that black box over any identifying information for a victim. I understand, obviously, there's millions and millions of pages they had to go over, but let's think about like just technology, AI. Did they even have like a full list of the victims' names? It seems like they could have just used AI to at least find those names, and that process, for whatever reason, either didn't work. I don't know. It's upsetting.
Well, it's also upsetting in the sense that the redactions of the co-conspirators and all the people that are probably people that would be culpable here, I don't feel like they've missed any of those ones, right?
Exactly. And there's just weird redactions that I would find along the way. Like, for instance, there's one that it was like, there were some cases where it was just like a news report that maybe had been emailed or something like this. I'm looking right, I have it pulled up. It's like the article is called Palm Beach Resident Faces Solicitation Charge. And in this article, there's a redaction, even though it was published in this publication. I'm trying to figure out, the Sun Sentinel, and that the name of the police chief, it says Palm Beach Police Chief, and then there's a big black box over his name. It's like, what? You guys are redacting the name of the police chief on a news article that are in these files, but you haven't redacted the victims' names? Like, what is going on?
Yeah, that is bizarre. I mean, and you probably know this as well as anyone. If you look through the files, names pop up, like politicians in Minnesota, but they do because Jeffrey Epstein was reading emails of news stories and their headlines, and so Tim Walz is in the headline because of a COVID update or something like that. It had nothing to do, as far as we understand, with any kind of culpability in the sex trafficking. So that is such a bizarre one because it's just like all those other ones that are not redacted for the same reason.
Yeah, I would find multiple copies of like the same email, or maybe it was like a reply and they would be redacted differently, so I could see like what the differences were, and it didn't seem to make any rational sense. I think like one time something about like someone's mom, not named, just mentioned like my mom was covered with a black box. So I would be curious to know how many people they have working on the team that went through these files in the first place. And
well, that question was actually brought up to Pam Bondi, and it wasn't answered. Did you watch that testimony in front of the House?
I watched the beginning of it. I need to watch the rest of it. Yeah.
Okay, it's utterly ridiculous. I mean, we learned out the market value of the Dow Jones Industrial Average that day from her, but we didn't learn the question of who made decisions of redactions. Literally asked that question by Thomas Massey, and it wasn't answered. And in fact, she just accuses him of having TDS. It's really sad when you think about it. And most of my audience is on the right, and most of my audience probably voted for Donald Trump. To see that his administration is doing this, on something so important, whether it's I always take this in two ways. I always think it's important because victims need justice, okay? But the other reason it's important is all Americans need to know what the hell this intelligence apparatus was, why this blackmail operation was occurring, and if you don't believe it was a blackmail operation, why somebody who was a serial pedophile, probably the biggest pedophile in American history, had access to our wealthy elites and had access to our politicians. At the very least, that has to be a
Mhm.
question everyone asks. But most likely, he was gathering blackmail because he was working with intelligence services, and and then those intelligence services are using that blackmail probably today, which is also why I would gather that many people at the top don't want these files to be released, and why they are still redacting them. Okay, so big question I have for you. Liberty Vault says, but the Dow is below 50,000 now, so now we can learn. Now we can get to the bottom of the story. This is, to me, this is so fascinating, and you put out one article. Um, I feel like even without a new release, things are still probably out there that we just don't know of, and I don't know a lot of people doing this. I don't have the time to do it. We're doing so many different stories and so many angles. Are you going to stay on this? Are you going to continue querying the system and trying to figure out where the connections are in Minnesota?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to. I'm the same as you were. I'm not just an Epstein reporter. It's been crazy in Minnesota with the immigration stuff going on. I'm also been covering data centers because up here in Minnesota we've
Big
got a
stories.
big proposed one. I know it's happening all over the state too, and that the NDAs involved with that has been what I've been reporting on too, because that's definitely interesting. But what I've been doing is the nice thing is people will send me tips or that kind of thing so that I can kind of go back. And as a data reporter, it's always so interesting to kind of see like the pieces slowly come together. And that's what happened with even putting together that story. It was like just pieces that didn't make sense. But
Mm.
once you know something, maybe it's like a certain name or a certain phrase, everything else starts to make a lot more sense too. So I just out of personal curiosity and also just anger and frustration for these victims for everything that they've been through. I mean, can you imagine experiencing this, then going to the FBI, telling your story and just kind of like waiting and nothing really happening and then people calling for the release of the files and it taking so long and then you find out your name is still in the files while other people's names that are not victims was redacted. I mean, can you even imagine how
Mhm.
horrific that is? So that's like what's on my mind. So I will definitely keep looking at the files and looking for ways where just citizens like you and me can try to do something even if it's just telling other people, you know.
Well, I think that's how you stop corruption. Is the first thing you have to do is you have to put a spotlight on it, and this is probably the most corrupt thing I've ever seen in the history of America. It's probably going to be larger than the JFK assassination, the JFK files, and the secrecy behind that. This thing is huge, and a
Mhm.
lot of politicians are making it worse today by still trying to not play around. I mean, the Justice Department right now is not following the law that was passed back in, what was that, November or December? November, I think it was. Yeah, the files were due in December.
Mhm,
That
yeah.
deadline, but they're still not following that law. A law that passed nearly unanimous. There's only one person, one member in the House that
Mhm.
voted against it.
Yeah.
None of them wanted to vote for it. Just FYI, it was really Thomas Massey being so persistent to get this thing done, and I really truly believe he's standing up for the victims, and I do think you are doing that too. So, we're going to be querying the system a little bit more too, and we'll share any info. But I gotta plug your site again because you do more work, and I did look at some of it, and I like it. So, this is The Watch with Nikki Davidson. It's the Substack. Website says the Northern Watch.
Yeah, you wanna hear my funny story about that? I started as the Northern Watch because at the time, there was no other, like, Northern Watch online, and then, like, 2 months into it, one of the small newspapers in, Minnesota, I guess, like, was using the name The Watch, but never put it online, and then
Yeah.
decided to put it online, and I was like, "Okay, well, let me if I use my own name, then at least I'll know that that'll be harder to have any of these problems with." But yeah.
You want to hear a funny story here? The Truth Hurts show, which we started in 2022, I want to say it was. Um, there is another YouTube channel with the same name, and it's a bunch of guys. They don't talk politics, so I don't really care that they've got it. It's actually the
Mhm.
logo and the text is like the same text as us too, which is like they had to have seen our name and taken it. But one of the co-hosts is what's his name? Smalls from the Sandlot movie. I
Oh,
can't think of the
really?
guy's name. Yeah, I was like, I'm actually honored. I'm like flattered that they did that. But yeah, they took the truth hurts. I think they just talk about regular topics in the day. They're not political like us. So it's not like I feel any rivalry here, but it's so
Yeah.
funny to see that. But if you
Yeah.
YouTube Truth Hurts, one of oh, what's her name? That female artist, one of her Lizzo's songs are called that. So her music video comes up first.
Oh, that that's hilarious. Someone's looking for you, they find Lizzo.
Yeah, go Truth Hurts News. That's how you find us easier. I'm not in the Lizzo video. I don't even know a song. I've never even heard her song. I should probably watch that. I've seen the video pop up just by searching Truth Hurts, but I've never actually watched the video. Maybe I need to watch it. Maybe I'd be a fan. Who knows? I might
Yeah,
be a
you need
huge
to make
fan.
like a some kind of video related to it. That way if YouTube pushes it to people that watch the video, then they'll they'll see your video about the truth
Right?
hurts and be, "Oh,
And maybe I'll change or get rights to the song, and that'll be my intro, my new intro, right? I
I
have
like
no
that."
idea. I was so excited Guns N' Roses is coming to Minnesota this summer at the new Shakopee amphitheater, but maybe that's in the past. Maybe I'm gonna be a Lizzo fan here on out.
Yeah,
Who knows? I'm sure I'm
I'm
her
excited to
demographic.
see it. Yeah, I'm excited to see your dance video most of all, though.
Well, thank you so much. I hope people check you out, and then we'll have you back on the show if you got some more discoveries here of the
Yeah.
Minnesota connection.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. And we're gonna do our post show for all our premium insiders here. I've got some budget news. I think you guys will be very interested in. Um, we're working on a story right now that's I think it might become a pretty big. Well, well, I'm gonna save it for the premium insiders. I'll put it that way. So stick around. If you're not a premium insider, you can become one today. Oh, I didn't have it ready to go. Let's go. Let's go. Support here. I'm gonna put the link in here right now. Become a premium insider. You can go to truthhurtsnews.com and click on support. Otherwise, you can go on Rumble. We have the link right there. Or right now, I'm gonna put become a premium insider, and this is where we do our post show, and sometimes we bring some extra content, but quite frankly it's just the fuel that keeps this thing going. We're producing videos every day. I hope you guys had a chance to watch our video that I published last night, which was Mike Foley, the guy challenging Tom Emmer. He basically confronted Tom Emmer. It doesn't make Tom Emmer look good. So yeah, you should check out that video. And interviewed him. I was going to do a show. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to interview him because I got this lined up. I was telling you guys last week we had some shows lined up. I got another good one coming up here. So I'm so excited. So much good stuff to talk about. Brad, I see he's in the comments. He says, I like Nikki's reporting. Let's see here. Where I think Razzle Dazzle said, good work, Nikki. Yeah, looks like she got some fans here on the show. Did very good job on that. And I want to see more. But quite frankly, that Leslie Groff thing is, to me, it's like, how is this person not in handcuffs? Like, you can't tell me all those years, especially after the prosecution, that she didn't know what she was doing. She's arranging the travel of these young women. Like, come on, that's ridiculous. So anyhow, let's go over to the post show. For everyone else that's not a premium insider, I will see you back here on Thursday at 1 o'clock. Take care.